Hey, good morning, and it's a lot darker than it looks, and it's not Weeknotes, it is time for another Quarternotes. Let's have the title card. And then, this quarter, I think I'm going to tell you about why I make Weeknotes. I've already told you what Weeknotes are, but let's do why, but we'll recap a little when we get into the studio. So, quickly, in a nutshell, what a 12-week year is it's targeted towards businesses where at the start of their financial year they set targets, and then at the end of the year they try to meet those targets, which means most of the work happens in the past 3 months. They're saying, well, if it's all going to bunch up at the end anyway, why not split the year into quarters or 3-month chunks and then set goal targets at the start and goals at the end of those 3 months. You can use this in your own personal life as well. As a freelance artist, it's very easy to start drifting around on what you're trying to do. So having a hard stop every 3 months to go, what was I planning over the last 3 months and did I achieve it, and where should I go for the next 3 months is really useful. It sort of gives you a framework to operate in and not go too far off into the weeds. However, the last couple of quarters, if you go back and look at them, which I advise you don't really, it's been very hard to do that because of the whole studio sale thing, that it's always imminent, it's always going to be in a couple of weeks' time. So I've been, well, I can't really plan the next 12 weeks because I don't know exactly when this is going to happen, and it changes as what I'm going to do. And then the review of the previous 12 months has been, well, the studio sale didn't happen, so I've kind of felt like I've had everything on hold. And that's what this one would be again. So I decided to talk about why I do Weeknotes instead of what Weeknotes are. You can go back and look at the what Weeknotes video is. Did I say that right? Mainly, I make Weeknotes so I can be a ghost, I guess, which is a little bit strange. Let me tell you about that here. Right, let's do a little scene setting. Sometimes there's a documentary about a famous person and then they go, here's the earliest footage we have of this person. And invariably, it's when the parents have got a video camera for Christmas and they stick it in and then they do a little bit of video and the kid is really small playing with the toys. And then they put the video camera away and it never gets touched again until often that kid rediscovers it when they're 7 and then makes films with their friends, and then they go on to be a big Hollywood director or something like that. Anyway, it's about that earliest footage is very mundane. That's the thing about it. And then one day I was listening to a radio program that was talking about field notes and found sounds and snippets and things like that. And someone was talking about a cassette tape. Let me just go grab some cassette tapes. I've always been a big fan of cassette tapes, like this medium of like recording stuff onto magnetic tape, and then it's like there's sounds captured on there. It's really weird. Anyway, the woman on there was talking about how her mother bought a tape recorder and they had some tapes and she just put the tape in there and then do what you always do, hit record, and then it was just background sounds. Her mum was chatting in the background, she said hello a couple of times and then kind of forgot about it. Then after that, her mother died not long after, and while sorting through a bunch of stuff many years later, found that cassette tape again, put it in and played it, and then there was her mother's voice in the background talking, captured from the past. And that was the only recording she had of her mother's voice, and she said it took her right back, and in that moment felt that connection again with her mother. And it got me thinking about how I have like photos of my parents and grandparents, but I don't really have any audio recordings or video recordings, and we're used to being on a very online thing where there's lots of people. We're consuming a lot of videos made by people, but most people don't make lots of videos. They're on their phone and things like that, but not really. I don't know, it's hard to explain. So 10 years ago, this whole thing, like a video journal, isn't the first time I've done this type of thing. Let me show you this. So this is a thing I did like 10 years ago. It's up here 10 years ago. And the idea being that I wanted like snippets of sound and something that you could put headphones on and then be taken to like a different time. So it's an ambient soundscape. Let me press play on here. So it's kind of like this. It is the Rev Dan Catt Experimental Audio Diary, episode 11. And today is Friday, August 21st, 2015. And then if I jump around here a bit, you have different sounds. I'm recording it. If I...
So that's like 200. Is this still
little girls?
Oh, look, don't walk across the blanket with your very sandy feet. That's like violet in this.
And there's 14, 15, 16, there's 17 of those. So I've done this thing before. I mean, it's exactly what it says. It's the Rev Dan Catt experimental audio diary. It's not very well put together. It's very amateurish. But again, the idea was you put headphones on, and for 20 minutes you enter this soundscape of basically the past, of history, where it's got little snippets of field recordings and just stuff we're chatting about. It's supposed to be nothing important. It's just day-to-day stuff. But in the future, like when my kids are old and they get to listen back to it, that mundane stuff triggers memories. They're saying this doesn't need to be interesting for it to be important. It helps if it's interesting for the now, but one of the main points of the Weeknotes, this visual journal that I keep, is so that in the future, in 40 years time, 50 years time, it would be nice if it was still around, my kids can just go, I want to hear what my dad sounded like when I was 14, 16, 20, that there's a record of me that they can listen to. And it doesn't need to be the big things like, oh, here's the only video I have of my parents is on their wedding day or something like that. It allows them that when they're my age to go back and see what I was doing at that age. And it seems to me that when we look back at the past, we have all the big events, obviously, and things like that, but some of the more interesting things are just the mundane, everyday things. So that inscription of the person complaining about the quality of the copper or something, like people's just personal diaries of what they did day to day. There's fascination in that type of archiving of just the normal. So really, when I do Weeknotes, when I do these Quarternotes and review and go back, and when I do these Weeknotes, they are to say, here's what I'm up to, here's what I'm doing. And I've often said, oh, they're not really for the viewer, although I love you very much, and I really love the fact that people watch them. And I kind of say, they're for me to remind myself of what I was doing like last year or 6 months ago. But in reality, they're for my children for like 40 years time. If none of these ever got watched until 40 years into the future, I would be absolutely fine with that. That's what they're doing. These are my equivalent of these cassette tapes here, only I feel like these are going to stick around longer than YouTube is. So at some point, I move on anyway. That's a thing for another time. Thank you for my why Weeknotes. There's a link down to what are Weeknotes down below. And that was this quarter. The review of this quarter is, well, I mean, there's some interesting things. I started a job, but mainly the studio didn't sell exactly the same as all the other quarters. What am I looking forward to the next quarter? Oh, a couple of things I possibly can't talk about. And once again, I'm looking forward to the studio selling. Will it? Who knows? Anyway, I'll see you next week for the start of the last quarter of Weeknotes for 2024. I love you all. Bye!